This message has no affiliation with the Department of War. All right, welcome back, everyone. They say that in the heat of a crisis, you don't rise to the level of your expectations. You fall to the level of your training. Well, in 2020, the American public education system was put through its most grueling stress test in history. And let's be very clear on this. The system didn't just fail the test. It pretty much walked completely away. It failed, right? For decades, we have been told that a child's zip code is their destiny. We've been told that a government-run monopoly is the only way to educate a nation. But then the world stopped. The laptops opened and the curtain was pulled back. What parents saw wasn't just a curriculum. It was indoctrination at its finest. Today we're diving into a book that is effectively the after-action report for the American family. And that is The Parent Revolution by Corey DeAngelis. It was a great read, by the way. Highly recommend to read it. We're going to talk about how safety became a pretext for a political wish list. How 20 years of academic progress was erased in 18 months. And why the solution isn't more funding for buildings. It is more freedom for families. This isn't just about policy. It is about a fundamental shift in power. It's about the great awakening of the American parent. It's time to stop funding systems and start funding students. So let's get into it. This is an amazing episode. And without further ado, this is the Martin Memo. The Martin Memo. Well, thank you for sticking around. If you think the union demands were the end of the story, it actually gets deeper. It's almost the tip of the iceberg. DeAngelis points to a smoking gun regarding how the science itself was being shaped. On page 19, he references FOIA requested emails that revealed a flurry of activity between the CDC and the American Federation of Teachers, also known as the AFT. This part was absolutely mind-boggling. The book describes the AFT as a thought partner to the CDC. Just imagine that. A political labor union was helping draft the very reopening guidelines the government then used to tell you it wasn't safe to send your kids back. DeAngelis notes that the CDC was even prepared to include the phrase, all schools can provide in-person instruction, but after the union's feedback, the language was softened. It wasn't just the science. It was science edited by a special interest group with a vested interest in staying home. And when parents try to use the legal system to get their kids back into the classroom, they hit a brick wall. On page 16, DeAngelis details how parents in Utah and California sued, claiming that the closures were a violation of basic rights to education. In California, the parents' complaint was heartbreakingly clear. They argued that the state was compelling families to use their homes as classrooms and expand their constitutional obligations into the living room. But the courts rejected them. And in Iowa, as we see on page 16, the Des Moines School District even defied the governor and law to stay online, becoming the only district in the state to flout the Return to Learn plan. This is the revolution part of the parent revolution. Parents realized that the school boards, the unions, and the courts were all parts of the same closed loop. They realized that as long as their child's funding was tied to a specific building, they had no leverage. They were, as the chapter title says, hostages to the system. They didn't have to answer to them. This realization is what shifted the conversation from, please open the schools, to give me my money back so I can find a school that is already opened. All right, so enough about the political side of things. Let's actually look at the people that were hurt the most, the casualties in the matter, and that is the students. DeAngelis points to the 2022 NAEP results, which is often called the nation's report card, and the results are terrible. I mean, they were horrific. We were not just seeing a slight dip. we were looking at the biggest drop in math performance for 4th and 8th graders since the testing program began in 1990. In reading, students are now performing on par where kids were in the 1990s. Decades of hard-won progress in literacy and numeracy were wiped out in a single 18th-month period. But here's the most haunting part of that all, and that is the equity gap. On page 4, the book highlights that while learning losses were seen across the board, they hit minority and low-income communities the hardest. The achievement gap between white and black students, which had been narrowing for years, burst way back open. The average black student is now roughly 4 years behind the average white student in math. 4 years behind. Can you believe that? For a system that constantly uses the language of social justice, the lockdowns produce the most unjust outcomes imaginable. And I know what you're thinking. Well, this might just be a temporary setback. No, you are wrong. This is not just a temporary setback. DeAngelis cites a McKinsey & Company report on page 4 that translates these test scores into real-world lifetime consequences. They estimate that students whose learning was disrupted by these shutdowns may earn $49,000 to $61,000 less over their lifetimes. When you multiply that across an entire generation, the impact on the U.S. economy could be as high as $188 billion every single year once this cohort enters the workforce. This wasn't just a break from school. It was a massive transfer of wealth and opportunity away from the next generation. The book argues that this disaster was predictable. On page 7, a survey from Education Next found that while traditional public schools were struggling to even check in with students, private and charter schools were twice as likely to be teaching new content daily. The monopoly didn't just fail to perform, it failed to even try, while the competition was proving that it could be done. This data is the why behind the revolution. Now, we've looked at the wreckage, so let's talk about the blueprint for the rebuild. DeAngelis argues that the solution isn't just better public schools. It's a fundamental shift in who holds the power. He invents one of the most powerful phrases in the movement: fund students, not systems. I have seen countless pro-school choice lawmakers across the country use those very words, especially Ted Cruz among others, and it is so vital and important. Think about that. Fund the students, fund our children, not the systems, not the indoctrination camps that we have been seeing. Think about how we handle every other essential service in America. When we want to help a low-income family with food, we don't force them to shop at a government-run grocery store in their zip code. As DeAngelis points out, we give them SNAP benefits, also known as food stamps, and they choose where to spend them. Whether it's Walmart or Trader Joe's or a local co-op, the money follows the person. The same goes for the GI Bill and Pell Grants. We don't tell a veteran they must go to a specific state college. We give them funding and let them choose the institution that fits their goals. So why is K through 12 education the only place where we trap the poor in a residential assignment? DeAngelis uses a brilliant analogy to describe the monopoly problem. He asks us to imagine if you had to visit a specific restaurant just because of where you lived. With a captive audience, that restaurant would have zero incentives to improve the food, clean the floors, or lower the prices. This is exactly what we see in our government-run school system. Without the threat of a customer leaving, there is no pressure to innovate. This is why our schools have looked the same for 100 years. Yes, they have smartboards now. I know back in the day they had chalkboards. But the same layout occurs, the same style of teaching is happening in our school systems. But when you introduce school choice through education savings accounts or ESAs, even vouchers, you flip the script. Suddenly, the school has to earn that student's presence every single day. This is not just a win for the kids who leave. It is a win for the kids who stay, because the public system is finally forced to compete and improve to keep its customers. Now, the revolution isn't just a theory anymore. It is a reality. We are seeing states like Arizona, Florida, Iowa lead the way in universal school choice. DeAngelis notes that the shift is finally breaking the one-size-fits-all model that has failed so many for so long. Whether it's a specialized charter school, a private religious school, or a homeschool pod, the power is returning to the parents full throttle. This is the ultimate civil rights issue of the 21st century, ensuring that a child's zip code no longer determines their destiny. Choice is the equalizer, competition is the catalyst, and the parent revolution is the vehicle that's going to get us there. As we close out today's episode, it is important to realize that the parent revolution Corey DeAngelis describes isn't just about bills being signed in state capitals. It is about a fundamental shift in the American psyche. For a century, we've been told that education is something the government gives to our children. DeAngelis flips that on its head. Education is something parents direct and the government simply facilitates. We are seeing the domino effect in real time. DeAngelis notes that once freedom is unleashed in one state, the neighbors start to notice. When parents in one zip code see their friends at the next county over choosing a school that fits their child's unique needs, whether that's a classical academy, a tech-focused charter, or a specialized homeschool co-op, they start asking, why not us? As someone in the military, I know caffeine, and this is a caffeine injection that you cannot undo. The unions overplayed their hand by keeping the doors locked, but in doing so, they unlocked the curiosity and ferocity of the American parent. As DeAngelis writes, the educational founders of our society are being rebuilt, not by bureaucrats in D.C., but by moms and dads at kitchen tables. So now you may be wondering, what is the next step? It is advocacy. It is showing up to school board meetings. It is demanding that your tax dollars follow your child, not a failing infrastructure. The monopoly is cracked. The curtain is pulled back. And the power is finally shifting to where it belongs, to you, to the family. The revolution didn't end when the masks came off. It was only getting started. If you want to dive deeper, I highly recommend picking up The Parent Revolution by Corey DeAngelis. It's the playbook for the next generation of American education. Your child's education is your choice. Let's make it a great one. All right, now it is time for my favorite portion of the week, and that is the cold monologue. You ask us questions throughout the week. My editor-in-chief writes them down, puts them on slips of paper, and then puts them in this hat. I have no prior knowledge onto what is being asked. So with that being said, let's dive in. What are your thoughts on this year's Grammys? Well, to be 100% honest with you, I did not even watch the Grammys. I just watched the clips afterwards. I did not want to give them any viewership, and this is a great example of why. You had seen it, and you had all these celebrities wearing provocative clothing, wearing suits where their entire boob was hanging out, or wearing latex because they were a Barbie, or having a bird cage on their face, kind of looking like a Demogorgon. It was very provocative and very disturbing. And then, obviously, you had all the political messaging. Listen, I get it. Politics, they go into every avenue of our life for the most part. There's few exceptions where politics are not involved. But you took away from the artist when you do statements like that, when you say F-Ice or Ice Out pins. When you say and do things like that, you take away from the award ceremony. You don't highlight the wonderful achievements that have been done by some very talented artists. Instead, you make it a political game, and it turns out very poorly, and we had seen it yet again. I don't believe it's going to get better next year. I think they're going to continue going further and further down the rabbit hole until there is no light in sight anymore. And it's very sad to see. I thought it was very demonic. I thought there was a lot of hidden messaging in there. It was overall very disturbing. I was very upset with Bad Bunny. I listened to Bad Bunny. I know a lot of people think he's not American, which he technically is, right? And it's very upsetting to see he goes up there and he makes a terrible political statement a week before he's going to the Super Bowl to headline the Super Bowl halftime show. It's very sad, it's very stark, and it's very disturbing to see. I know I've said that numerous times, but that is the honest truth. You, the celebrities, took away from the ceremony. They made it all about themselves and their politics and what they think is right, and that does not resonate with over half of America. And I guarantee you it's a lot more than half of America, because a lot of liberal colleagues and friends I talked to were very upset by the show because it did not highlight the artists. It highlighted their political messaging. On the flip side, Jelly Roll, if you have not watched it, you have to look up Jelly Roll's Grammy speech. It was phenomenal. He said, Jesus is for all. Jesus is for everyone. And that is beautiful because it's true. I think the biggest surprise of the night, despite all the provocative clothing and everything, was actually the applause that Jelly Roll received after giving that very God-driven message. It was beautiful. I'm glad to see a lot of people applause, whether they were just doing it out of the kindness of their heart or not to look bad, but I was very impressed and surprised by the amounts of applause that he received. But Jelly Roll's speech was phenomenal, and it is worth a listen. But on that note, my friends, that is all we have in store for today. Be sure to join us on Monday as we have another live stream. I'm looking forward to it. The last time we had Isaiah Lafone on. This time it will most likely just be me, but it is worth a listen. I cannot wait to see you all then and answer some questions. So be sure to share your thoughts on X. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at the Martin Memo. And do not forget to subscribe on YouTube. We just hit 5,000. Thank you so much. God bless you all. That is a huge feat. And now we are looking at 10,000. So thank you so much, and continue sharing and supporting. Now, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night. This is the Martin Memo. God bless. The Martin Memo.